Thank you, and welcome to the Patriots 300 Level Podcast. My name's Kevin. I'm joined by my co-host, Eric. We're joining you again for this week. We had gone over the last episode, kind of the Jets recap. Today's episode's looking forward to the Chargers, how they're going to fare this week against them, with the Chargers coming off the bye and the Patriots coming off that big win against the Jets. So, Eric, I think one of the first things we just want to talk about was the Chargers. They faced them last year. They beat them 45-0. What are you kind of looking at going into this game? Do you think it's going to be a much tougher competition? What are you looking forward to for this?
Yeah, so that is a great question. I think that's what a lot of people are looking at going into this game. Is last year Patriots' best game of the year, probably the best game they played before the Jets last week. Best game that they played in a couple of years was the Chargers game last year, where they won 45-0. Just full complimentary football in all three phases. Defense didn't allow any points. They forced Justin Herbert 2 interceptions. Probably the worst game, one of the worst games he had as an NFL quarterback. Just looking at the numbers, 26 of 53, so his less than 50% completion percentage on over 50 passes, only 209 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So I think I'm not expecting Herbert to be as bad this game. I think Bill threw a lot at him that he just hadn't seen before. I think just having a full year under his belt, or full year and a half under his belt, I think he's going to be better. So I don't think you can anticipate that. They also, Chargers also have a new coach this year, where their coach last year wasn't that good and he got fired. But it seems so far that their coach, Brandon Staley, seems like a good coach. He was the Rams defensive coordinator last year, and the Rams last year gave you a lot of problems right after the Chargers game. So I think some just key points from the game last year is the special teams just had their way with the Chargers. Gunner had a 70-yard punt return for a touchdown. He also had another 61-yard punt return that brought the ball inside the Chargers 20-yard line, which led to a field goal. They had a blocked field goal return for a touchdown. So I'm not expecting special teams to be able to score essentially 21 points like they did last year. But it might be a key issue going into this game. Chargers going into the game, at least according to Football Outsider, have the worst ranked special teams. They just got a new kicker, Dustin Hopkins, so we'll see if that has an impact on the game as well. But I think it's definitely going to be a lot closer of a game. I'm not expecting the Patriots to be able to have their starting quarterback throw 69 yards and win, scoring 45 points like they did last year. We'll have to see. I think there's some aspects of the game going into it, some different things with the Chargers, but overall, that's just my key points. Last year was a great win. But I think with the coaching staff and their special teams, I don't think we'll be able to see the same impact. I think it's going to be a lot closer of a game. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think last year we're probably not going to see a 45-0 blowout. I think special teams played a really big role in there, but I think it still could play a role, but not as much. And Herbert's definitely got another year under his belt. I think it's going to be a pretty close game. Chargers have looked good this year, but they have shown some weaknesses. Rushing, the run defense being one of them. Kind of their other than their top 2 wide receivers, who else is going to get the ball? So they need to really kind of shape up those other areas to kind of get strengthened. So, Bill's definitely going to attack those routes. I think one of the big keys is just Justin Herbert too. I think he is one of the top tier quarterbacks in the league and is going to be for the next 10 years and more. That's something Bill really talked about glowingly this week, about how good Herbert is and what he thinks of him. And he's a pocket quarterback, but he can also beat with his legs. He's got a good arm. He's got a strong arm. He can really throw it in there, and can also evade the pass rush. So he's really talented. They got a steal in that pick, and the Dolphins are probably kicking themselves a ton, knowing that they had the opportunity to draft him, and they went for Tua, who they may even get rid of after this year. If the reports are close on Deshaun Watson, but who knows what's going on with that saga. That's the story for another day. So I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Patriots attack them. Are they able to shut down their top 2 wide receivers and try and make them beat them the other way? Are they going to be able to have success running the ball still, like every other team has against this team? So I think those are the kind of 2 keys of the game going forward.
No, I agree. The run game especially, I think, is going to be big. Chargers have by far the worst run defense, at least statistically in the NFL. They're allowing 162 yards a game. Next closest is the Texans with 145. And they're allowing the most yards per carry with 5.4, followed by the Cardinals at 5.0. Part of that might be in the Chargers' first 6 games. 3 of the opponents have been the top 3 running offenses, Ravens, Browns, and the Cowboys. So that might be a part of it. But also, it does seem like all the other teams have had success running the ball as well. At least based on the last couple of weeks with the offensive line being better and improving more, I expect to see the Patriots try and run the ball with Damian Harris. And then whichever running back they decide to go with, either Taylor or Stevenson. I think Stevenson might be a good option just because he's a powerful, fast back. But if they go with Taylor again, I think that might be, I'll expect to see them run the ball a lot. And then also Chargers have the 4th best passing yards allowed in the NFL, or 4th lowest passing yards allowed per game, with just at 200. So we'll have to see. Based on those numbers, part of it might be that teams, since they're able to run the ball, just keep running the ball more. But part of it is also they do have some good secondary, good players in the secondary. They have Joey Bosa on the defensive line. So it might be a little tough for Mac this game. So I'd expect to see them run the ball, and then once they're running it, then go into play action and then start opening the field up more. But I expect to see heavy runs first few drives.
Yeah, I think we kind of agree there how they plan on attacking them, and I think it'll be interesting just to see how that goes. So looking kind of at the spread right now, the over under for the game, the Barstool Sportsbook, they have the Chargers favored by 5.5 points. Over under right now is at 49. Where do you see the Patriots going in this direction?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very close game. I think the Chargers are a very good team. They've also played most of their teams very close. The only games that haven't been close is the blowout to the Ravens last week, but they're coming off a bye, so they had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. And then the other game that wasn't close was the Raiders, where they won by 2 touchdowns. But other than that, they beat the Redskins by 4, lost to the Cowboys by 3, beat the Chiefs by 6, beat the Browns by 5. So I think it's definitely going to be a close game. So I think it's going to go the Patriots' favor. I think the Jets game is going to springboard them going forward. I think ultimately they're going to win 31-26. I think they hold the Chargers to 3 touchdowns and 2 field goals. And I think their Chargers are also going to miss an extra point just because I know they have a new kicker this week, but they've had a lot of special teams issues. So I think it's going to be right around that 5-ish. 3 to 7 points will be the ultimate score, but I think 31-26. So based on that, I'm going with the Patriots against the spread and also with the over.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty close to where you are in that. I think kind of looking back at the season, they were in most of the games, even the Saints game. If the defense could have stopped them, they would have had the ball back with a chance to tie or win the game. So I think they've been really in all of their games this year. 1 or 2 plays really made the difference. And I think that the Jets game is going to help kind of springboard them, like you said, into actually making those 1 or 2 plays. They're playing with a lot more confidence after that. They look like they have a lot more confidence. And they did not make as many mistakes as they're making before. They weren't having big penalties that killed them. They did have a few pass interferences, but they didn't end up kind of breaking the game open or anything like that. They weren't fumbling the ball. That's the biggest thing. They weren't having turnovers, and they grabbed a couple turnovers. So I think kind of making those changes, playing better. And it's the big thing is, are they going to go in the right direction? Are they going to keep going forward, or are they going to take a step backward? I think they're going to use that game to go forward again. So I think they're going to make a couple extra plays that they're going to need in this game. Those get to have it moments. So I think that I would definitely take the Patriots in this. So I would go probably 34-28 with a missed field goal. So it would have been closer at 34-31 and taking the over there. So yep. I think we're both pretty much in agreement there in that front.
Yeah. Yep. And then just one thing that just makes me a little nervous. I don't like coincidences or seeing things like that happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that just makes me reminded of a little bit is last year when they beat the Chargers 45-0, you thought maybe this is the moment where they finally went over the hump
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to be successful going forward. And then the next week, granted, it was on 4 days rest. They're going up against Brandon Staley's defense.
Mm-hmm.
This week, they beat the Jets 54-13. They're going up against Brandon Staley's defense. A little bit of a coincidence. So that just makes me a little bit nervous. I'm not expecting them to get blown out by the Chargers. Just something to keep in mind where last year we sort of saw the same thing with a really huge win and then they weren't able to capitalize. But also a little difference with that is special teams just made so many plays. The offense actually wasn't great that game. Whereas this game, the offense finally was hitting on all cylinders. So just something to consider going forward. I think this team is different than last year. I think that they're more talented. I think they have what it takes to make the playoffs and win these big games. We just haven't fully seen it yet.
Yeah, no, I definitely agreed there. So coming up, we have two special guests that are joining us today from the Chargers beat. We have Fernando Ramirez. He's a Chargers beat reporter for Sports Illustrated. He can be found at Real F Ramirez on Twitter. And then after Fernando, we have Gavino Borquez at Gavino Borquez on Twitter. And he's the managing editor for the Chargers Wire, and he's the writer for the Draft Wire at USA Today. So I hope you enjoy those. And after this week, you can catch us next week having the recap of the Chargers game. Thank you very much, and look forward to talking again next week. Thank you, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Patriots 300 podcast. My name's Kevin with my co-host Eric, and we're joined today by Fernando Ramirez. He's a Chargers reporter for SI. You could follow him on Twitter at Real F Ramirez, and he's located in the San Diego area. So thank you for joining us, Fernando, again. It's nice to have you here.
Yeah, no, thank you guys so much for having me on. This is awesome. Definitely, I do the commuting thing. It's just way more comfortable for me. I don't know if I could live up in LA. I don't think LA is ready for me yet. So definitely, who knows, maybe in the future if it's in the cards. But as of right now, yeah, I'm doing the whole commuting thing. But again, thank you guys for having me on.
I know, it's a pleasure to have you. So kind of looking at the Chargers for the last 6 games, looking from afar, really get to see some games overall. They looked much improved from last year. Herbert has taken another step forward. What are really your overall thoughts on them through the 6 games? Is their record kind of realistic from where they are, or do you think they may be kind of overrated where their record is? How do you think they stand so far?
Well, before the season, I had said that if they were 3-3 by this point, they must have a good football team, or they must be good, if not a little bit better than good. I had them going into this point at 2-4, so I'm very surprised that they're 4-2. The only thing is that I was feeling good about them up until that Baltimore game, but then after what we just saw with the whole Baltimore and Cincinnati, now you wonder, were the Chargers just half asleep thinking, oh, hey, like, we're going into the bye week. Maybe they went in too confident. I don't know what it was, but it just didn't look like the same Chargers team. They couldn't run the football. They couldn't throw the football. They couldn't stop the run. Literally, it felt like John Harbaugh had gotten in a DeLorean, went back in time and got Devontae Freeman from 2015, Latavius Murray from 2015, and Le'Veon Bell from 2015. So I just think it was kind of a hiccup game for the Chargers. It was kind of one of those games where they were a little bit asleep, or I don't know what it was, but I think this weekend should be a good indication of who they are as a team. The Patriots are no slouch. I mean, for whoever thinks that, yeah, they may be 3-4, but they've been in almost all their games. They just blew out the New York Jets, but it's going to be a hard fought game, and the Chargers they should be a little bit weary because of that they're not saying it, but that 45-0 game, and some of these players, it has to be in their back of their mind, especially because of the way that that the Patriots took it to them last time.
Yeah, no doubt. So based on kind of what you're seeing this year, what was the jump that you've seen from Herbert from year 1 to year 2? What do you think he's improved a lot from when we last saw him?
So
the Patriots game?
Yeah. So with the offensive line, because it's improved, he's been able to do a three-step drop a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
So he's able to find guys like Keenan, guys like Mike. He's able to do a little bit more with that. Also, his vision. He hasn't really he's thrown 4 interceptions so far, but honestly, probably two of them have been his fault. The other one, Jared Cook, last week against Baltimore, had it in his hands, and the defender kind of ripped it out of his hand. So that was more on that. Another one, Keenan slipped in the end zone, and the Cowboys picked it off on him. So it was just one of those things. But his vision has gotten a lot better. He seems a lot smoother when it comes to making some of these throws. So he just seems comfortable. I mean, obviously, except for that Baltimore game, he's looked comfortable. He's been able to bring the team back in a couple of instances, especially that Cleveland game. That was another thing, too. I feel like going in a game like that against Cleveland where it's just a shootout all the way, I feel like that kind of exhausted them going into that Baltimore game. So it'd be interesting to see maybe down the line if they play. I mean, Derwin told us we're going to see those guys again. So maybe the next time that they play, it'll be a different outcome. But definitely, I was very. I think Herbert is really taking his game to a whole nother level. It's just, can he sustain it, and can the receivers see? My problem right now going into this weekend is the Raiders have tried taking away Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and so did Baltimore. Baltimore succeeded because Jared Cook wasn't on his game, Austin Eckler wasn't on his game, Donald Parham wasn't on his game, so the other areas struggled. Against the Raiders, yeah, Donald Parham played great, Jared Cook, Austin Eckler, they all played great, but it just, when they take away Mike and Keenan, what is that offense going to look like? And that's the question mark, because I think Bill's going to try and do that this weekend. I think he's going to try and run the ball down their throats, and I think he's going to try and double Mike and Keenan the whole game and say, hey, let your secondary guys beat us. And that's just my thinking, but I think that's something similar to what we're going to see.
Yeah, that's a great point. That was something I actually wanted to bring up with you. Is historically, Bill Belichick has been known for taking away opposing teams' number one, number two option, and then having other guys try and beat them. So my thought going into this game is he's going to try and take away Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Do you think that, who do you expect to step up if that is the case? Who do you think from the Chargers would be who they try and target?
I think Austin Eckler is going to be a guy that they're going to try and go after a little bit more, just because I feel like Austin is kind of a mismatch when he's out at. They haven't really used him in a receiver role all that much this season. Maybe this is the game that they do that on, but I would love to see him out wide, maybe against a linebacker, maybe find a mismatch. Jared Cook has to step up as well, and so does Donald Parham, but the area that I've seen the biggest weakness on the Chargers offense has been that third receiver. Jalen Guyton hasn't stepped up the way that the Chargers have kind of thought that he would. Josh Palmer's kind of still learning the offense. So, and this is from what Drew Brees told us in the offseason, this is a complex offense. So for him to learn, I mean, slowly but surely he has to be adjusting to it. But the third receiver has to be the guy that steps up. Whoever that is, whoever they're going to be throwing in there has to step up this game, because the Patriots are a dangerous team. They proved it last year, and last year they didn't have Donta Hightower. They didn't have some of these guys, and this year they have them. So it's going to be a hard-fought game. But another area that I see somebody else needing to step up is that second running back spot. The Chargers haven't had that consistent second running back this season. Joshua Kelly's kind of gotten the last two. He's gotten to suit up the last two games. He hasn't really. He's shown a little bit of juice, but nothing to say, oh, that's a second guy behind Austin Eckler. So it's Justin Jackson is kind of. He doesn't seem like It doesn't seem like this offense kind of fits what he does. And then rookie Larry Roundtree has been inactive the last two games because of Joshua Kelly being active. So it's just been a weird overall kind of start for the Chargers. I mean, they're winning games. At the same time, it's kind of like, okay, well, they need guys to step up. And so I definitely think that the third receiver and the secondary running backs need to step up. This week.
Yeah, I think that'd definitely be key, though, too, for how the Patriots defense has played this year. So they've had trouble covering running backs going out for receptions because their linebackers aren't the fastest. Hightower's aging, he's getting slower. And really Kyle Van Noy's in the same boat. So any kind of receiving running back has given them trouble. So that's something that was kind of on my number one worry list for this game. So that plus the slot receiver, because Jonathan Jones for the Patriots, their slot corner is out for the year. Now they have a second year, Miles Bryant, playing the slot. So I think if the Chargers can kind of hit on those two areas, which were your concerns, then it could be a very close-knit game. It could be a real challenge for the defense there.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, that's the thing, is that these guys need to step up. I know that I've kind of asked Brandon Staley about it, and he's like, yeah, no, guys just need to step up. So he's taking that Ted Lasso kind of approach to this. But I know that in the back of their minds, they have to be a little bit worried about how guys are not stepping up, and they're kind of not making their mark. So they definitely need guys to really step up, especially if Keenan and Mike were taken away last year against the Patriots. So if that's going to happen again, they need to have a concrete plan on, hey, we need to go this way or we need to go that way. So I honestly thought, I was very underwhelmed with, in the Baltimore game, I thought they were going to use Austin Eckler a lot more in different ways. Maybe putting him out in the slot, maybe putting him in different ways and having him just run right past the linebackers. But they didn't do that. So maybe this is the game where we see a little bit more of that. But definitely a little bit. This is going to be interesting to see kind of the way they try and approach this game, because last year Anthony Lynn and the Chargers just weren't able to do anything on offense or on defense. Hell, even on special teams with Gunnar Olszewski. Yeah, that guy was just running all over the place. And then right before halftime, they were down 21-0, and you kind of think, okay, 21-0 with this young gunslinger, maybe not that bad. And then Michael Badgley gets a kick blocked, and Devin McCourty runs back for a touchdown, 28-0. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a little bit of a longer lunch and then come back and get something else to drink, and then I'll come back and watch that terrible second half. So, but definitely for sure, those are the two areas that they kind of need to be better at.
Yep. And then kind of looking at last year's game, special teams was, like you were saying, a huge factor in the game. And looking really at the kind of the numbers this year, it looks like they're rated number last in the NFL in special teams. Have you seen any kind of improvement from there, or do you think it's really kind of a worry going into this game as well, just by how much emphasis the Patriots put on special teams play as well?
No, I think they have improved. They haven't given up the big play yet on they kind of give up a big play against the Ravens coming out of halftime that set up Baltimore to start at their own 43-yard line. But other than that, they've kind of clamped down on it a little bit. They haven't given up the big punt returns. They've been kind of clamping down on that. Ty Long has gotten a lot better this year when it comes to his punts. So he's been doing a lot better of a job. Obviously, right now, the breaking news – well, not breaking news because it's just kicking news, but the Chargers released Tristan Vizcaino, and they signed Dustin Hopkins, who is a former Washington football team member, and he's a lot better when it comes to kicking than Vizcaino. Vizcaino's missed 5 extra points so far, and it almost cost them against Cleveland. But they've made that, and then they got Andre Roberts from the Houston Texans. They signed him as a returner. They waived KJ Hill. The Chargers know that the special teams has to be a lot better, and that's why they're making these necessary moves. And then also against Baltimore, they didn't have all their guys. They didn't have Drew Tranquil, who's been a big part of their special teams. They didn't have Nasir Adderley. They didn't have some of their pieces because those guys were out. So now they're getting some of these pieces back. Maybe they'll be a lot better. But I definitely think that they're a better special teams squad than they were last year.
Yeah, that makes sense. One question I did have is just looking at the numbers. Chargers run defense are ranked dead last in the NFL in rushing yards allowed per game. I was wondering, since we haven't been able to watch as many Chargers games as you have, is that stat a little overinflated since they've gone up against 3 of the top run offenses in football in the first 6 weeks in the Cowboys, Browns, and Ravens? Or is the run defense a major concern that might be an issue for them Sunday with the Patriots?
No, yeah, it's been a major concern, legit. The last 2 games against Baltimore and Cleveland, they allowed over 400 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns. So I think the Patriots running back scored 5 touchdowns on Sunday against the Jets. I think I'm right. Like,
yeah, it was 4 or 5.
Yeah. So it's a concern for the Chargers. And I mean, moving forward, if they can't clamp down on that, I mean, in the playoffs, you might have to see Baltimore again. You might have to see the Tennessee Titans and Derrick Henry. I mean, how are you going to be able to stop that? You're going to basically have to put your offensive line to play on the defensive line and see if those guys can at least get in there and make some effort. But the Chargers should, well, I don't want to say they should be getting. Justin Jones has been practicing. He's their defensive tackle who's been out since week 1. He's kind of been more of their run-stopping defensive tackle. Linval Joseph has done well. The problem has been, in a sense, Jerry Tillery has been one of those guys that hasn't really stepped up. He hasn't really shined yet the way people had kind of expected him to this year with Brandon Staley. And it's not Brandon Staley's fault or anything like that. It's just that he doesn't seem to fit their kind of. I don't know. Never mind. I don't want to jump on that. I don't want to take that wagon. But it's just been the defensive line has been a little bit sus in a sense. So linebackers need to get a little bit better. I mean, against Baltimore, they didn't have Drew Tranquil. They didn't have Kenneth Murray. So that kind of hurt them a little bit. They didn't have Nasir Adderley, who's been a bigger help in the run game. But yeah, the Chargers giving up, I think, against Baltimore literally started every second down with 2nd and 2, 2nd and 1, 2nd and 3. So they were getting up a big chunk of yards. So the Chargers really have to settle that down. They have to tackle better. That's what Brandon Staley said this week, that's been a huge emphasis about tackling, wrapping up, making sure the corners and the secondary helps as well. And the thing is, you have Derwin James. He's the leader of this defense, but he can't be everywhere at once. So they could try and put him at the line and have him help with run stopping, but then you're going to need him in the secondary. So it's kind of pick your poison where you want Derwin at. So definitely, I just think that this weekend they have to kind of let Mac Jones be. If Mac Jones beats you, hey, that's fine. But if you let the running backs do it again, because I'm going to be completely honest, I didn't think Lamar Jackson had that good of a game against the Chargers. He had 2 picks. I think he had some good plays, but that was just because the secondary was giving up. Was towards the end of the game was like, oh crap! I think they're going to keep on running the football. And no, Lamar would drop back there and throw. So I didn't think Lamar had that strong of a game. I thought the Chargers did a good job with him. It was just the running game was just strong. Was literally what hurt them. So in this game, if Mac Jones beats you, okay, so be it. Mac Jones beat us. But you cannot let the running backs be. And the Patriots have really good running backs. So it seems like that's kind of been their staple since Bill Belichick has taken over, that no matter if they draft them, they sign them, or trade for them, the running backs are going to be good. So definitely the Chargers are going to have their work cut out this weekend when it comes to having to face Damon Harris and Bolden. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a big key to how the Patriots can kind of win this game, is kind of run it down their throats. They've been more of a running team ever since their last Super Bowl win, where they had a ton of rushing yards. They got down to that ground and pound game, bringing the tight ends and that sort of stuff. And based on kind of how the Chargers running defense is their passing defense kind of overinflated just because like their stats, are they overinflated just because they're giving up so many rushing yards that they don't need to defend the pass as much? Or
I think their pass defense has been solid. I think that's what they prefer kind of to. Well, I mean, obviously you're going to prefer it because you're better at it.
Yeah.
But like against Kansas City, they said, okay, we're going to either take away Travis Kelce or we're going to take away Tyreek Hill. They decided to take away Tyreek Hill and let Travis get yards and get some plays, but they really were able to clamp down on him towards the end in the second half. There was the only drive that he was able to kind of get loose was when Derwin James went out with an injury real quick. I think it was like a shoulder injury. Oh, he had gotten his shoulder dislocated. He got it popped back in. Yeah. He had gone out. Travis Kelce kind of got loose for a couple of plays, and Derwin comes back in, and then they were able to kind of settle down a little bit. But their pass defense has been good. The only thing is against Cleveland, I think Baker threw for 300 yards, but that was just because Njoku had like a 70-yard touchdown catch because Nasir Adderley didn't wrap him up. So they have let some plays go, but other than that, they've been a pretty good secondary team. I think Michael Davis has kind of taken a step in the right direction. He was actually entrusted on on covering Darren Waller, Travis Kelce. He covered them at certain points. I think you think it's going to be Derwin just covering these guys straight up, but no, they had Michael Davis covering some of these tight ends, and he's done a good job with them. So Michael Davis is stepped up. Asante Samuel Jr. has had some issues. He had some issues against the Browns game. That's why they kind of had to they took him out of the game, and they kind of had to settle him down a little bit. But he's been a bright spot for them. And then obviously you have Chris Harris Jr., Nazir Adderley, like I mentioned, and Derwin James. So the secondary has actually done a pretty good job. It's just been the run defense that if they could clamp down on the run defense, their secondary would be a lot more solid. Just because in that Raider game they were able to kind of take the run away from. Well, they got off to a huge start, obviously jumping out 14-0. So the Raiders kind of didn't want to run the ball that much, so they started throwing the ball, and the Chargers were kind of able to slow them down when it came to in the passing game. So the Chargers their secondary is good. It's just the run defense that hasn't helped them out as much.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. One question I actually did have is, outside of Joey Bosa, how's their pass rush been? I know the Patriots offensive line has been shaky the first 4 or 5 weeks, to say the least. Definitely was their weakest point. It looks like it's been getting better the past few weeks, but still some holes, still missing Trent Brown, and Isaiah Wynn has been their left tackle, has been inconsistent week in, week out. Last week was probably the best game of his career. The week before was one of the worst. So just wondering, has their pass rush been able to get to the quarterback where they might be able to cause Mac Jones to throw it earlier than he'd expect?
Joey has been the consistent part of this this defensive line. The only problem has been is that nobody else has kind of stepped up. And for years, Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram would always say, "Oh, we're going to meet at the quarterback," and they consistently each had about 20 sacks together during the season. Joey has gotten triple and even quadruple teamed at times, and it kind of feels like the Chargers need more of a rush from the opposite side. You know who they've gotten quite a bit of a rush from is Linval Joseph. I know he's 33 years old, but the dude's like a tank. He's kind of consistently gotten pressure up the middle, and he got a sack on Lamar Jackson, but he's kind of been a guy that stepped up and really tried to help out. But the Chargers need Uchenna Nwosu and Kyler Fackrell to step up, because Uchenna got a sack against Lamar, but before that he hadn't really done much. So the Chargers need both of those guys to step up, because Joey Bosa is going to disrupt, but if teams can triple team Joey Bosa and cover everybody else one-on-one, well, what's the point of pass rushing, because those guys are just going to get through. But definitely Joey is Joey. He's still one of the top pass rushers in the NFL. I know his numbers may not be all the way up there, but that is just because teams are literally scheming to triple team him and let everybody else go one-on-one. So the Chargers do need a little bit of a booster there, and that's why I say that Jerry Tillery really hasn't stepped up in that. He played well against the Chiefs and he played well against the Raiders, but other than that, Jerry Tillery really hasn't been much of a pass rushing threat. And obviously the guy, and then obviously, like I said, Uchenna Nwosu and Kyler Fackrell, those are other guys that have to step up as well.
No, that makes sense. So it definitely should be interesting to see how they do on Sunday. So another question I had was something I've seen on social media make a big deal of. I don't know how realistic it is, that the Chargers home games, they don't really attract as many fans ever since they moved to Los Angeles, at least in traditional standards. Where you're seeing some people saying for the Raiders games where a majority of the fans were Raiders fans. Is that something that's been blown out of proportion, or is that something that we might expect the Chargers this game to possibly also feel like a road game? Part of the reason why I'm also asking is I'm going to be at the game, so I'm wondering, for my own personal instance, is this going to feel like a home game for me? But
well, I don't know how Patriots fans travel, but I mean, to start off your first two games with the Cowboy fans and Raider fans, it was a difficult one. But like the Cowboys game, it was probably about 60-40. So 60 Cowboys, 40 Chargers. But when the Chargers like scored or they were on the field and they would make a positive play, like it got really loud. But obviously for Cowboys, it would get loud too. The Chargers kind of drained out the Cowboy fans in a sense, or the Raider fans, because the Chargers were up for so long. Obviously, the Raiders kind of made a comeback. But I think it's kind of a thing that's been blown out of proportion a little bit because I don't know if anybody noticed, but obviously they don't really mention it out in the media all that much. There was more Philly fans and Raider fans in over the weekend at Allegiant Stadium. So I mean, it happens everywhere. I mean, anytime the Lakers travel, like I remember a couple of weeks ago for a preseason game, they were in Sacramento, and you could hear huge cheers for the Lakers and huge boos for the Kings. So I mean, it happens. I mean, it's one of those things. It happens to the Rams, it happens to the Chargers, it happens to everybody. But I just think with the Chargers, it was blown out of proportion because they played in a soccer stadium for 3 years. So I feel like that's the reason why. And then, honestly, these were the prices when they were at SoFi, at the soccer stadium. I think for a family of 4, it would have been about $3,000, and then on top of that, $100 park. No, not $3,000. About $2,000 $2,000, $1,000 and $2,000. Then it was $100 for parking. So, and then that's without even eating anything inside or anything like that. So, I mean, it's expensive. So, obviously, road fans were gonna pay those prices, and they were gonna do that. But definitely, I think that now they're gaining a little bit more and more, just because. I mean, you have and everybody says it, number 10. Justin Herbert is really drawing in fans. They've had some guys show up. They had Conor McGregor show up. Jamie Foxx has shown up. Like, they've had some pretty cool celebrity show ups also to come and support the team. So I think Dwayne Wade was there a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, they've had a lot of hype around them, just because obviously they're 4-2. They have Justin Herbert, they have Keenan Allen, they have Mike Williams, Derwin James, and Joey Bosa. So they have some figures, but I don't know how well the Patriots fans travel, but I expect it to, it'll probably be about 50-50. If Patriots fans travel as well as I think they might, it should be about 50-50. If not, it could be 60-40 Chargers. But yeah, definitely, it's definitely going to be interesting to see kind of, because this is the first game where you kind of don't know what's going to happen. With the Browns fans, I kind of got a sense of it, but with this one, I don't know. I don't know how well New England's going to travel.
Yeah, it should be pretty interesting. Like back in the day, they used to travel really well, but with this, with Mac Jones there instead of Tom Brady, is it going to be the same? So that's a pretty good storyline to look at too. Now going into kind of just how our predictions for the game, you gave us some really good insight on how the Chargers may try and handle the Patriots. The over/under for the game is 49 points. And the Chargers are favored by 5.5. Where do you see this game going?
Wow. They're favored by 5.5.
Yeah, I was shocked. I didn't think it was going to be that big of a point spread.
Maybe Vegas thinks that they're that Baltimore Ravens game was a fluke. I don't know, man. I saw some things in that Baltimore game that really should concern that if I was a fan, if I was in the building, it would concern me a little bit. But I don't know how this team's going to do coming off the bye. Honestly, this is going to be one. Like, and I do a prediction every Friday, but this is going to be Saturday. This one really has me puzzled. I just don't know what's going to happen, because I can't trust Bill Belichick and his injury report. I know what it's going to be. It's going to tell me 15 players are questionable, and all 15 are going to line up and play on Sunday. But definitely, I think there is a little bit of cause for concern for the Chargers. Last year, Cam Newton only threw the ball 10 times, I think, or 12, and they won the football game 45-0. So there is a little bit of cause for concern, but definitely, I think this game could go either way. 5.5, wow! I think it should go down by the time Sunday rolls around. But I'm definitely surprised that Vegas put it up that high. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Chargers dropped this one. I wouldn't be surprised if they won this one. So I'm kind of right now on the what's it called? The teeter-totter? I'm kind of in the middle of the teeter-totter right now. I can't go to one side.
Yeah. The way I see it, based on how the Patriots have played this year, they could be 5-1, 6-0. They could also be 1-5. But they just played. They played really cut to the level of their competition, and they did the things that they would used to not do. So there would be one or two plays where they need to have it, and they didn't get it. And that was something that the Patriots of old would used to, if you needed those two plays, they would get them, and that's how they would win. And this team so far hadn't gotten that way. I think the Jets kind of may kind of propel them in the right direction. And you have to think too, they played the Bucks and the Cowboys right down to the last minute or 2 minutes. And those are probably one of the two best teams in the NFC. So if they could do that with that, they could probably hang with anyone. So I think it's going to be a pretty close game. I do think the Patriots are going to use that Jets win as a springboard for the rest of the year. They need it in order to keep going and have their playoff hopes alive. So I think I'd take the Patriots at that, the 5.5. I think they'd probably win by a field goal or 5 or so. So I think it'll be a pretty close game though.
Yeah, I agree completely. I'm also biased because I'm a big Patriots fan.
Yeah.
So like usually I'm just always seeing my whole life, never bet against Bill. I think it's definitely going to be a close game. I think it's going to come right down to the wire. So I think they might win by a field goal, maybe 6 points. But I wouldn't be shocked if they lose either. I think it's going to come right down to the wire.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's just one of those games where you just can't really predict. I mean, if you're going to go off of, I mean, usually I go off of based off of quarterbacks, but I just don't know. And obviously I would take, I've been impressed with Mac Jones actually the last few times that I've seen him play, but obviously I would take Justin Herbert, but it's just one of those things where Bill Belichick is the ultimate wild card. And it's going to be interesting to kind of see how two defensive, I mean, one defensive mastermind, obviously, but it's funny because Brandon Staley said yesterday that he feels like Bill Belichick doesn't get enough credit. He said Bill Belichick, the offensive coordinator and the special teams coach, Bill Belichick doesn't get enough credit for the things that he's done for the offense and the special teams. So should be an interesting matchup. I kind of wonder if what the tipping point is what's gonna be the thing that tips it one way or the other. But yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised if either one of them wins it. I'd be surprised if this is a blowout either way though. So the Chargers don't usually do blowouts. They usually do really close, except for the last game, but they usually do really close games. Games that, like, I'm writing an article, like I was already writing my Browns one and I was like, oh, Chargers lose one against the Browns and then they end up winning and I'm like, crap, I have to redo the whole thing. So yeah, it's one of those things, but I'm definitely interested to see kind of how Sunday plays out. I think it's a huge game for them, for the Chargers, especially because right now the Raiders are 5-2. You're 4-2. You're coming off your bye week. You're 3-1 so far in the conference. You dropped the one against Baltimore. You kind of need to get this conference game back underneath your belt to be 4-1 in the conference and get back to 5-2. So there's a lot of factors, but I definitely I wouldn't be surprised, like I said, either way.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, thanks again for joining, everyone. This is Fernando Ramirez again. You can find him on Twitter at RealFRamirez. You can also find him on Sports Illustrated, covering the Chargers there on the beat. Thank you very much for joining us again. And again, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pat's 300 Level Pod, and join us next week. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone, and thank you again for joining the Patriots 300 Level Podcast. My name's Kevin, my co-host Eric. We're joined today by Gavino Borquez. He's the managing editor for the Chargers Wire. He's also the writer for the Draft Wire at USA Today. He can be followed at Gavino Borquez on Twitter. So thanks again for joining us, Gavino. Really happy to have you here today. Just learn a little bit more about the Chargers from your perspective, kind of see what the Patriots are in for this week.
Yeah, thanks for having me, you guys.
All right. So I just want to get really your overall thoughts first, just about the Chargers, how they've looked through these past 6 games. I know they look like they've made a lot of progress from last year. Herbert looks like he's taken another step forward. He had a really good rookie year this season. He looks like he's probably the real deal, probably one of the top 5 quarterbacks going forward in the future. So what's your really perspective on how they've looked this year? What's looked good from them, and what have they really improved on the most?
A lot better than anticipated. So through the first 6 games, I think I had them projected to be 3-3, and the fact that they're 4-2 says a lot. As far as where they're good, I would say offensive and defensive sides of the ball, they look really sound. Brandon Staley being a defensive guru, he's helped with that unit a lot, and it also benefits that they have one of the more talented rosters across the board. And on the offensive side of the ball, many people were curious to see how Joe Lombardi would do with that system. And there's some kinks that he still needs to work out, but overall he's kind of tailored it to Justin Herbert's strengths. The one area that I feel like needs to be improved is special teams, but they're hoping to fix that after they acquired Dustin Hopkins and return specialist Andre Roberts. But overall, I'd say a well-rounded team. One thing from the past that was pretty common that hasn't been a thing this year is the injuries. They've stayed healthy for the most part, especially Derwin James. And again, when he's on the field, the team's just that much better. So overall, I'd say that they're in good shape following the bye week.
Yeah. Now, what do you think really has made Herbert kind of progress from last year into this year? I know last year he looked actually really good, even though the team didn't do as good as he played, kind of. What do you think he's kind of made the next step this way? I know that he's more of a pocket passer, but he also has that running threat against them, kind of like a Josh Allen sort of way. But I actually think he's probably better than Josh Allen. I'm not really a big fan of him. But what do you think has really improved his game and had him take that step from year one to year two?
I think the talent's always been there. We saw that in his rookie season. It was just a matter of getting him into a system that played to his strengths, because at Oregon, he was in like a West Coast system, and it was just all butchered up. And again, that's why there's a lot of people questioning how he would translate to the pros. But last year under former offensive coordinator Shane Steichen, he looked like the real deal, because you put a system that's going to allow him to push the ball down the field. And again, he's just one of those gifted quarterbacks who has the arm strength and the arm talent. And early on with Joe Lombardi, he took what he learned with the Saints and kind of works well for Justin Herbert. And like I mentioned, there's some kinks that still need to be worked out, especially on early downs. That's where they struggle as a whole. But again, he's making it simple. He's allowing him to get the ball to his playmakers. And I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit later, but then you're seeing players that are benefiting from the system, like Mike Williams, who is probably the better receiver production wise between him and Keenan Allen. So again, it comes down to the system, just coupled with his arm talent and his arm strength too. And again, it just seems like the game is real slow to him, and he's able to deliver week in and week out.
No, I think that makes sense. And he definitely looks like he's just progressing. I know last year he had a really good season. Patriots game was probably one of the outliers where he didn't play that well. I think part of it was just the Patriots threw a lot at him that he just hadn't seen before. So you can't really expect that. I don't really expect him to be like that this upcoming Sunday, but it looks like he just keeps getting better and better. And Chargers look like they have their quarterback going forward, at least in my opinion. Glad that the Dolphins didn't take him and we have to face him twice a year. But
I think seems to be the debate on Twitter to this day still. And again, the Dolphins fans really can't defend themselves. A lot of them are starting to come out and say, I wish we would have drafted Justin Herbert. But again, that's one of those what ifs. If Herbert was on the Dolphins and Tua was on the Chargers, it would be interesting to see how that would play out. Because again, they all have their strengths and weaknesses on the offensive side of the ball. So that's to me one of the more like the bigger what ifs in terms of this draft class is if they flip flop teams.
Yeah, definitely. One question I actually did have is just sort of for this upcoming game. Bill Belichick has historically been known to shut down teams number one and usually number two options. My guess would be, based on the Chargers, it would probably be Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. If that is the case, who do you think Chargers would have to look to step up this game to get their production if the Patriots are able to successfully shut them down?
One guy or two guys, I should say, that they've been going to, especially this last game against the Ravens. He looked to Jared Cook quite a bit, and it wasn't good because he didn't look Keenan Allen's way until like the fourth quarter. So they're starting to use Austin Eckler's multidimensional skill set after being quiet the first couple of games. He can run the ball really well. He's slippery, but he can be lined up out of the backfield in the slot and even just out wide and used as a pass catcher. And then you have Donald Parham as well. So he's an ascending tight end as well with his 6'8" stature. Let's say Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are shut down. I expect them to get Eckler involved, and I expect them to get Jared Cook involved. And I wouldn't be surprised if he looks Donald Parham's way. One guy to keep an eye out on One that's starting to receive more targets is rookie Josh Palmer, the third-round pick out of Tennessee. So he saw 4 targets. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it seemed like each week he's getting more playing time. And especially with Jalen Guyton, he was the number 3 receiver, but he hasn't done much. They're trying to get Josh Palmer more involved. So it wouldn't surprise me to see Palmer start to see more action the remainder of the season.
Okay, that's good to know. And then even just going on Eckler, that's, at least for me as a Patriots fan, that's my biggest concern is the Patriots. One of their weaknesses this whole season is guarding running backs that are able to catch. Their linebackers are pretty slow. Some of their safeties, other than Adrian Phillips, aren't really great in coverage. So that is one of my concerns going into the game. I think Eckler is going to have a big game just because of that. But so I think that is something to keep an eye on as well. One other question that I had is looking at the Chargers run defense, statistically, at least it ranks last in the NFL, allowing around 160 yards a game and over 5 yards a carry. I was wondering if you thought that stat's a little overinflated since they've gone up in their 6 games. Half of the games have been against the 3 best running attacks in the NFL and the Cowboys, Browns, and Ravens. Or is this run defense a major concern going forward, especially this Sunday with Patriots run offense?
It's a major concern. Again, you're going from Gus Bradley's defense to Brandon Staley's defense. So you're going from a 4-3 system to a 3-4 system that's very multiple. And again, he didn't bring in any interior defensive linemen with the exception of undrafted rookie Forrest Merrill. So again, you're throwing him into a system where you're going to be playing with lighter boxes because they want to throw more defensive backs on the field. And you can see that. But they also don't have the talent to hold their own at the point of attack. Especially this is a team with Linval Joseph. He can only do so much. Jerry Tillery, he was drafted originally to give this team a pass rush boost, which he has. He's gotten his quarterback pressures, but he's just not strong enough to hold his own in one-on-one and even double team situations. Justin Jones, the team's best interior run defender, he was out. He's been out since week 1. We should be getting him back this week, so he should be able to help in that department. But how much, I'm not sure. Regardless, this system was meant to limit the explosive plays, which he's done a phenomenal job of doing. But in terms of defending the run, it's an issue. I figured they'd be able to get away with it, but last weekend against the Ravens, or the week before that against the Ravens, they scored 3 touchdowns on the ground, and that just can't happen. And that's an area that has me concerned because I know with the Patriots, they're not well known to be a running team, even with the running backs that they have, the amount of running backs that they have back there. But this is if you own one of those backs, you should start him in fantasy. Even a guy like JJ Taylor, you should probably throw him into your starting lineup because it can get ugly on the ground. Even though they had a bye week to try to fix some things, Coach Staley said it comes down to him and just being better as far as the fundamental side of things. And again, it really just comes down to the talent, and that's going to be an area that they're going to address this offseason. We've talked about names like Akeem Hicks, acquiring him in a trade, but again, it's not going to happen before the Patriots game. At least I don't believe, and that's why I think the Patriots might have quite the day running the football this weekend. So definitely a concern.
Yeah, man, especially just the way the Patriots have run the ball this year. And with the offensive line kind of getting on the right track right now, they've been getting better and better each game. And Damian Harris is a huge threat with the Patriots. So he's got an explosion. He's quick. He's got a lot of power at the line. So the first hit doesn't usually take him down. So I think that's a good key piece to the game to look forward to. Kind of jumping off on that, based on their run defense being so bad, their passing defense is actually ranked pretty high. Now, do you think that's just a staple of them getting run on so much that they're not getting passed on as much? Or do you think that their coverage corners are actually pretty good up there, and that's maybe something the Patriots might not want to attack as much?
Yeah, so Staley's done a great job with putting his defensive backs in position to win based on just the coverage schemes. And again, you can be an average defensive back and you're going to probably thrive in this system just based on how he's disguising things, where he's putting you. And for the most part, they've held their own. They've had their slip ups, a few blown coverages here and there, but for the most part, the job is just to keep everything in front. And again, it's primarily a zone coverage scheme. You're not going to see a lot of man, but it's the way that he has it. So it's a too high look, but again, it's going to revert into more like it always changes. And again, regardless, what he wants to do is just keep the skill players out in front. And you haven't seen a lot of quarterbacks take chances down the field. Again, it's happened a couple times where they have, and they still have held their own because they have the talent in the defensive backfield to limit that. That's why when it comes to Mac Jones, I'm curious to see like how he'll do, because I know that he's getting better each and every week, but like I don't expect him to have a big day. And I know that it comes down to protecting the middle of the field as well, because it seems like that's where he's been having a lot of success. Of course, I know he's finding different areas of the field as of late, which it's good for him and the rest of the Patriots offense. But I don't see Mac Jones having that great of a game on Sunday just because of that. And again, you look at quarterbacks like Dak Prescott, Derek Carr, Patrick Mahomes. Staley did a good job with limiting them. So I don't see how Mac Jones could have a pretty productive game through the air at least.
No, that's very fair and a very good point. I think for me, like I'm actually really looking forward to see how Mac does, just because this is another great defensive mind that he's going against. So just seeing how he performs against a different system, like you said, he's getting better each and every week. But I think given the Chargers' deficiency with the run game, I think they're going to try running the ball a lot. And I'm just wondering when they do decide to pass, how he's going to fare.
And that's the thing that we saw with the, before we switch gears.
Yeah, of course.
They ran the ball like crazy. They had success doing it, and that's also something to keep in mind, is because field position, and if you're able to shorten the field for Mac Jones, that's where he may have success. So he may throw some touchdowns if they're able to shorten the field for him, just based on how well they're running the ball.
Oh, those are great points. One question I also had is just going into this game, a lot of people might think of the Patriots played the Chargers last year and then they blew them out 45-0. Granted, it was a different head coach, but other than the coach, what major differences do you see occurring this game versus last game? I know that special teams was a big factor in the game. Do you expect the special teams to also be a big factor coming into this game?
So a couple things stand out that they made changes to. One is the offensive line. So the Patriots definitely had their own last year. Again, you were dealing with you had the first the worst offensive line in the league that you guys were just stunting, doing twists like crazy and just having success. They have a few starters along the offensive line, starting left tackle with rookie Rashawn Slater, who's definitely looked like one of the better, not only offensive linemen, but rookies in this from this draft class. At left guard, you have Matt Filer, who previously played with the Steelers, and then center Corey Linsley. They've all looked great, but then when you get to the right side, you have Michael Schofield, who's taking place of Ode Ibushi, who was picked up this past offseason. He tore his ACL. He's not going to be there. And then you have Brian Balaga, who he's been hurt since he signed with the Chargers last offseason. Or you have Storm Norton playing in place of him. And again, like I said, the Patriots had their own as far as getting pressure on Herbert. That might be a little bit different, but again, it'll be interesting to see like the pressure packages that Belichick has in mind, because it just goes to show, like last weekend against the Ravens, the Ravens got pressure on Herbert, and it really affected the way he played. So I'm curious to see how Belichick does. Switching gears to the special teams, we have a new special teams coordinator in Darius Swinton. He's one of the more veteran special teams coordinators. They upgraded the coverage units with a lot of the rookies, Nick Neiman, Chris Rump, veterans, Kyler Fackrell. And again, you've probably seen in news going back to last week, they acquired a return specialist in Andre Roberts and a new kicker today in Dustin Hopkins. That's an area that has me concerned, because having a return specialist, sure, it should help, but it's more so the coverage units, because that's seemed like it hurt them against the Ravens as well. And, they struggle with that, and they gave Lamar Jackson and company just shorter fields. And that's an area that they didn't really address, and it's going to be harder to address. So they might be better in terms of like how they're game planning in that area, but that may be something that the Patriots may have success with. And then when it comes to the kicking department, Tristan Vizcaino, he missed 5 extra points in the last 6 games too. So Dustin Hopkins, I know he struggled. So yes, he's a big name kicker. How much is he gonna have? Like, how much success is he gonna have? I don't know, because I feel like with kickers nowadays too, you could have the best kicker, and any given Sunday, he could be like the worst kicker out there. It seems like extra points, especially this year, there's a lot of missed extra points. So again, but it's just the coverage units that has me a little concerned. Because again, the Patriots had their own last year. It's possible that they do the same thing. I don't think they're going to run as wild because it looks a little cleaned up, but at the same time, that may benefit Mac Jones and company in terms of the field position, just based on how the coverage units have looked thus far.
Yeah, I think that could definitely be a key part to the game. Just by Gunnar Olszewski did really well against them last year, and if they're having kind of the same struggles in that department, it could be something that he may be able to kind of tear into them that way for that. Just going back, just one quick question I had too about their kind of zone defense that they play. Do they ever get caught kind of just with when we face Dak, we implement a zone defense, and one of the issues with zone is that you can kind of get torn apart if you don't have pressure on the quarterback, and you can just sit back there and attack the open zone. Do they have any sort of pass rush other than Joey Bosa that can get to the quarterback to kind of disrupt that? Is that what makes their zone defense effective, or are they switching in some man with the zone to kind of confuse the players that way? Right.
I was telling you with their safety, so they'll go with like a 2 safety look. Again, but doing that pre-snap and confusing quarterbacks, that's one thing. But in terms of the pass rush, it's Joey Bosa, and then it's just whoever wants to show up on that given day. Because Uchenna Nwosu, he came into the season basically as Melvin Ingram's replacement, and he was expected to kind of see Leonard Floyd type season. People were banking on that because Staley does a good job putting his defenders in position to win, but he hasn't done as well as many anticipated. I even thought he'd have a breakout season, but I think he only has 13 quarterback pressures on over like 120 pass rush snaps, according to Pro Football Focus. The veteran Kyler Fackrell, he's gotten home a couple of times. And then as far as the interior goes, Tillery here and there, Linval Joseph will get his own, but if you watch the Ravens game, and again, containing Lamar Jackson is difficult in its own, but there was in one play in specific where he scrambled for over 20 yards. And if you watch the play, they're just, again, they cannot get home whatsoever. Because again, even with Joey Bosa being double and triple teamed, when they can't get to the quarterback, that says something. And that's been a concern too, that I feel like a lot of people haven't talked about, is the Chargers pass rush. Because majority of the attention has shifted to the run defense. And that's a concern in its own. And again, Mac Jones is going to be one to really win with his legs. But again, like when you can't get pressure on him, again, he's going to have just that little bit of time, and that could, he could have success with that. So that's a concern that isn't being talked about a lot, is outside of Joey Bosa, there really hasn't been much of a pass rush. And this is like when you have a pass rusher being double and triple teamed, that's your time to shine. But again, just that one play stands out because it's been occurring far too often, and it shows just the lack of pass rush. So it shows that they're like one of the higher ranked teams in pass rush productivity. But if you watch the film, it doesn't really show just that. So it's a concern for sure.
Yeah, and I think one thing just for the pass rush that might be a factor is the Patriots offensive line has just been inconsistent this year. First 4 weeks, they were absolutely atrocious. They were dealing with some injuries. The last few weeks, it looks like they're getting better and better. But Isaiah Wynn, their left tackle, some of the weeks he's just been absolutely atrocious and has gotten benched. This past week, he had the best game in probably of his career. So I think it depends on which Isaiah Wynn shows up, especially if he's going up against Joey Bosa as well. I think that might be a factor of if the Chargers can get pressure or not, is how well the offensive line is in general. Mm-hmm. One question I did have is, who do you think are some X factors for this game? I know you mentioned a couple, some of the, like Eckler and some of the wide receivers. Is there anyone else that you think is going to have an impact on this game, or if they have an impact on this game, this could shift the game one way or the other?
Yeah. So if there's going to be an X factor, I would have to go with Kaiser White and Drew Tranquil. So again, Kenneth Murray, who we traded with the Patriots to acquire that pick last year in the back end of the first round. He's dealing with an injury right now. So it's been them in the middle of the defense, and they've been kind of doing it all outside of Derwin James. So they've been solid in coverage and especially against the run too. I don't expect the interior to get that much push. I don't expect them to turn things around. So it ultimately comes down to them to really help with limiting yards beyond the line of scrimmage. And because, again, if the Patriots start to run wild, again, that it could get difficult. If they start to churn yards, it's only going to wear out the defense. So it's going to come down to them to just like limit their yards beyond the line of scrimmage. So I would say that there are two X factors that come to mind. As far as the offensive side of the ball, it comes down to that right side of the offensive line. So Michael Schofield and Storm Norton. I think the left side of the line should do fine, but again, if the Patriots find their way, especially with those two guys and Herbert's being pressured, that could lead to a long day for him and the rest of the offense. So,
yeah, it should be a pretty good game though overall. So right now, Vegas has the Chargers favored by 5.5 points, over under at 49. Where do you kind of see your prediction for this game going? Who do you think may pull this off? What do you think the score might be for this?
So I did an early prediction, and I have the Chargers winning 27-21. So it's going to be a lot closer than people think it is. The Patriots are really starting to put it together, and they're coming to LA at the perfect week. I feel like, especially their confidence is going to be high after that big win over the Jets. But I just think having that bye week and then just having that time to fix some kinks, it'll benefit the Chargers. I think the Patriots are going to run wild, but I also think that Herbert will throw for a pair of touchdowns. We'll get a turnover through the air and pick off Mac Jones, so that'll help as well. But I see the Chargers winning 27-21 in this one. But it should be close overall, and I expect it to be a good game.
Yeah, I think you're kind of close to where we're thinking how it's going to be a close game. I think it may go on the other end where the Patriots may pull this off. They've had a lot of close games so far this year against the Bucs and the Cowboys, where they were just probably one or two plays off from winning. They go for on fourth down on either of those games, and they probably would have ended up winning the game. And we saw against the Jets, even though it was just the Jets, but we saw a more confident team. A team that doesn't have as many mistakes as they're making early on in the season. So I think using that Jets game as a springboard to continuing having the season actually go in the right direction would be a good spot. I think it'd probably be within a field goal or within one score. So I think probably 34-28, 34-31, that sort of thing. I think it's probably going to go right down to the wire, and we'll see if they make the mistakes like they're making early on, or if they're able to kind of tighten up and not make those. So I think it's going to be a pretty close game, but I think with that Jets win, I think it's going to be a pretty big confidence boost for them.
100%. Yeah, and I have to agree a little bit with Kevin. Granted, I'm biased because I am a Patriots fan, and I'm just been taught never bet against Bill. He always finds a way to pull it off. So I think it's going to be very close. I think it's going to come down to the last possession. I'm guessing to 31-26, where 4 touchdowns for the Patriots and a field goal, 3 touchdowns and 2 field goals and a missed extra point for the Chargers. I think it's going to come right down to the wire. I think part of the reason why I'm thinking that is also just that they pull it off is 3 games earlier this year, the Dolphins, Bucks, Cowboys, they couldn't pull it off. I think this is the one where they finally, in that gotta have it moment, they have it. But I think it could go either way. I think it's going to come right down to the wire, and I think it's going to be a really good game.
And again, I think, of course, the game before their bye week, it was against the Ravens, so more of a superior opponent than the Patriots. But you're able to see the weaknesses for sure, like all unfold. Offensive side of the ball, the early down play calling. If they don't get ahead, you're putting Herbert in less manageable situations. Defense, the run defense, and then special teams just all around, but particularly the coverage units, knowing that the Patriots have a good return department. So again, that's why, many people are writing the Patriots off now because they're still viewed as the team without Tom Brady. But and Mac Jones has shown that he's been like the best rookie quarterback out of this entire class. And like you said, don't write off Bill Belichick. And we saw that last year, 45-0. And, people thought it would be a lot closer, and they just saw how well Herbert was playing, and they were expecting the Chargers to win. Because again, it was Cam Newton under center. So yeah, including myself, I saw the Chargers winning that game, but you can't write off Bill Belichick. And I'm interested to see what he's going to do on Sunday.
My biggest just concerns as a Patriots fan is the Chargers are coming off with the bye, so they had 2 weeks to prepare, 2 weeks to correct some of the issues that they had against the Ravens. Then also just part of it is just last year the Patriots destroyed the Chargers 45-0, and then they faced Brandon Staley the next week with the Rams, and the Rams just shut them down. So just seeing the same similarities, destroying the Jets and going up against Brandon Staley makes me a little concerned. But I think it should be a good game.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for joining us. Again, you can find Gavino Borquez. He's the managing editor again at the Chargers Wire. He's the writer at the Draft Wire at USA Today, and you can follow him on Twitter at Gavino Borquez. Thank you very much for joining us. We really enjoyed having you on.
Thanks for having me, you guys.
All right. Thanks.